Hi, welcome to Underwater Walmart. How may I help you?
One Nintendo Switch 2, please.
We're out of stock.
Can you check the back?
No.
Really? Because I think I see one on that high shelf over there. Shouldn't be too hard to go there and grab it.
Someone pre-ordered that one.
Look man, I just want to play the new Mario Kart.
Don't we all? Please move along if you're going to pester me.
Fine.
Huh? Huh? What the?
Sorry I took it. I hope this makes up for it.
This is just 28 cents in a Tootsie Roll, idiot.
Ha! What a cheap chump. I finally have my hands on a Switch 2. Let's go! I got in trouble for that and had to return it, but Underwater Walmart restocked their Switch 2s literally the day after, and now I legally have one. So the Switch 2 has been around for 4 months at this point, and it's become a popular topic in the world of gaming. Everyone's kinda split on whether the successor of the first Switch is good or not, and many have discussed the bigger and more controversial topic of Nintendo's questionable pricing decisions with not only the console but the games for it as well. But I'll be discussing what I think of the console, having it in my possession for about 3 months now, and see if it's worth the price tag or not. I'll be briefly going over the hardware, the system software and user interface, and the exclusive and non-exclusive games made for it. So some of the bigger changes are definitely with the hardware and the physical appearance of the console itself. The Switch 2 has a much more powerful CPU than its predecessor, has a higher resolution with 1080p resolution in handheld mode, and can support 4K in dock mode. 60 FPS is the new standard rather than the Switch 1's standard 30 FPS. And the Switch 2 can even support up to 120 frames per second, which is impressive. I've played and compared games like Splatoon 3 and Metro Dread, which were one of the many games that got mild enhancements when played on the Switch 2. Either their frame rates were increased, or loading times reduced, or graphics improved, or any combination of those things. Personally, I've only noticed maybe a mild difference between the console's performances. To be completely honest, unless the frame rate is really tanking for high performance games, I don't really care much for a stellar performance. I really only get a new console for its novelties or exclusive games, which I'll get to later. Maybe I haven't noticed the changes because I have big bulging bug eyes and can't see things normally like everyone else, but anyway, I suppose it's still cool the new Switch can handle most modern games better, and it's almost on par with other modern consoles. Ultimately, its function is a console that can be taken on the go, so it may not have the absolutely best specs to play games, but it's perfectly serviceable. Now, what I really care for though is the little new knickknacks and physical differences with the Switch 2. Specs may be the hot topic of gaming, but I want to talk about this! As you can see, the console itself and the Joy-Cons are way bigger than its predecessor, which makes it more comfortable to hold. Playing the Joy-Cons on their sides now are much more bearable simply because of the size of the controller and their shoulder buttons. The Switch 1 feels so tiny now. Now, I haven't really used the Joy-Cons for the Switch 1 much, mainly because better alternatives like the more conventionally shaped Pro Controller exists, and Joy-Cons have always been susceptible to stick drift over time, making it mildly insufferable to play virtually any game. But now that the new Joy-Cons fit more comfortably in my hands and stick drift isn't a problem, for now, I can see myself using them for a longer time before I'll slink back into my Pro Controller phase. Also, I don't know if it's just because they're fairly new and not worn out yet, but the control sticks feel a lot more clickier and responsive than its predecessors. Now, despite what I said, the Joy-Con grip is just as fun as it was to play with the Switch 1's Joy-Con grip. It's quirky, unconventional, might be uncomfortable for some people, but it feels fun to use and gives me a reason to make the snapping noise with the Joy-Cons, which is so satisfying to do, whether it's with the grip or the main console. I think the magnets are way more satisfying than sliding the Joy-Cons with the Switch 1, but they're also better in the practical sense. Way easier to detach them with the bigger buttons on the back of the Joy-Cons. It's just fun to snap them whenever taking the Switch 2 on the go or putting it into dock mode. Speaking of dock mode, there's not much to say about the Switch 2 dock, aside from it being bigger to accommodate the console's bigger size, but it also has a bit more width inside it, which I'm guessing is to prevent the console's screen from potentially scratching. I've never really had that issue with my Switch 1, but it's neat that the change is there. The back part of the dock where you can put in your charger and HDMI cords and such now has a removable back piece instead of being on a hinge. I personally prefer the Switch 1's hinge dock because there were times where I fumbled for a bit when putting on the back piece, only mildly annoying though. But if the Switch 2 is not docked, I think it fares really well in that regard too. The new stand is a lot more stable and flexible, so hopefully this doesn't happen to my new Switch. Definitely one of the more novel additions is the mouse controls, where you can use either or both of the Joy-Cons and slide them on their side to use them as mouses. Mice? They do feel a bit awkward to use since they're obviously not shaped like normal computer mice, but honestly they work just fine, albeit a bit quirky. With the Joy-Con straps, they're a lot more stable on surfaces, but even then, they still work at an angle. I don't know how effective they really are in practice since there haven't been that many games with mouse functionality so far. The first game I really messed around with the mouse controls was in Donkey Kong Bananza's Artist Mode, a side mode to sculpt whatever masterpiece or monstrosity you want to make with the terrain textures from the game. The mouse controls are perfectly fine here, though kinda weird you need to use the left stick in order to rotate the sculpture instead of being able to use the mouse for it, but it's just a mildly weird control scheme. It's a cute extra mode to throw into an already great game, though I think it barely scratches the surface of what the Joy-Con mice are capable of. So why not go back in time and use an even more dated art software? Mario Paint was re-released for Nintendo Switch Online's Super Nintendo catalog. The original game required a mouse to play, and the same still applies to its re-release. And this is my first time getting the Mario Paint experience. It's definitely not made for drawing actual art, but it's still fun to mess around with this thing that came out in the 90s, back when digital art was still in its infancy. But what I want to know is why there's a dozen ways you can erase your artwork, but you can only use the undo tool once? At least the built-in fly swatting minigame is fun.
I think the most notable game that utilizes the mouse controls is Drag and Drive, a 3v3 wheelchair basketball game.
I gotta say, this one is actually a lot of fun. The controls feel very intuitive. Each Joy-Con moves a wheel in the direction you move it in, and the shoulder buttons, or I guess what would be your left mouse click in this position, allow you to pass the ball to your teammates. With the use of gyro controls, lifting the Joy-Cons off their surface will allow you to throw the ball yourself. There's even a bunch of tricks you can pull off to gain extra points, which requires a lot of finesse with both the mouse controls and the gyro controls. This game is just one of the better novelty games that uses conventional controls without feeling unbearably gimmicky. I hope more games like this will be released in the future, games that actually use the mouse controls in a meaningful way. Along with that, there's also this indie game called Mousework, centered around using a mouse to play party games with up to 4 people. It looks cute and full of charm. I might check it out when it releases. I'm probably stretching the list of games that feature mouse controls, but come on, there's hardly much to begin with. There's also some shooters that have received mouse controls for fine-tuning your aim, which makes perfect sense. I have yet to see how some of them actually play, but I definitely will see how Metroid Prime 4 fares when it releases in December. A Prime game getting mouse controls is like a match made in heaven. I just hope to get more mileage out of this gimmick, given it's one of the few things I was actually hyped for when getting this console. Lastly, I want to touch upon the built-in microphone in the console, or not touch upon it at all. Microphones being implemented into consoles and controllers isn't really a new thing. The PS5 has done it, Valve's Steam Deck has done it, even Nintendo's own DS and 3DS line of systems have done it. And with the Switch 2 being a hybrid handheld console, it makes sense for it to join the bandwagon, though I literally have not used it yet along with the game chat feature. I think it's cool that there's finally an option to text and voice chat with people, whereas that feature was completely absent on the Switch 1. But like, alternatives exist, have always existed. But then again, it's still a cute idea, making it convenient to chat with friends without having to whip out another device and set it up. I can't quite comment on the quality of the voice chat or screen sharing feature, but I do hope to use it someday and see how it is. Just for the one time and never use it again. That's about all the major hardware aspects I wanted to touch upon. Obviously, they're the things you're going to notice first when you get a new game console out of the box. Next comes the system software and its UI, because staring at this thing for 15 minutes without turning it on can only squeeze out so much enjoyment. Oh! My initial impressions of the Switch 2 up to this point have been mostly positive, so I hope that trend continues when I gaze at the new home menu screen and be blown away by Nintendo's quirky UI design. I'm so excited. It's the same damn thing again! The same layout, the same icons, the same basic themes. Why do they bother giving it its own category in the settings if it's only going to give us the same 2 options? Again! To be fair, Nintendo gave the home menu the same minimalist design as the Switch 1 so that everyone can have an easy time navigating and familiarizing themselves with the console, whether or not they've owned a Switch before. But at the same time, could they have not done things a little different? Where's the quirky design choices? With the Wii and 3DS, everything looked really stylized with appealing visuals and ambience to fill the silence while you decided what game to play, while maintaining practicality in mind. You could still drag and drop your different applications or create folders and organize them, which that latter feature didn't appear on the Switch until years after its launch as a system update. Literally, one of the only new things I noticed from the Switch 2's menu is the sound effects when you click on the icons under the games. I am really enjoying this console. Well, complaining aside, there are a couple new features and some nuances with the menu and its tidbits. The game chat feature has its own icon, so you can either click that or press the physical button on the Switch 2 Joy-Con to initiate a friend group. God willing if I could get any of my friends to get the Switch 2 just for game chat.
Another new feature is Game Share, where Switch 2 users can stream their game with a friend to play co-op without needing another copy of the game. This is actually pretty neat, probably really great for groups of friends that want to play co-op games but don't want to sell a kidney just to play Mario Party Jamboree. With the few new features out of the way, it might be worth checking out the new Switch 2 eShop. I wonder if they changed the UI or did anything cool, or nope, nothing changed in the slightest. I must be in purgatory. What is this? Could they not have added some fun music to play while you browse the digital store's games? The DS and Wii line of systems all had music incorporated in their shops. Why did they not do the same for the Switch? And again for the sequel? The overall UI is soulless enough as it is, and sure, not every storefront needs music. Steam, PlayStation, Xbox, most of them barely feature any sort of shop music. But Nintendo has thrived on creating this fun atmosphere for players, even if it's something simple like a digital shop. And to take that away for the sake of creating a practical, minimalist design is, boring to say the least. Now, does any of this matter in the grand scheme of things? I mean, the menu, the eShop, they do their job. You can easily navigate to find a game or setting or whatever, but it's nothing to write home about. The DS, 3DS, Wii, and even the God forbidden Wii U had some weird applications you could mess around in if you weren't playing a game. The Switch family being completely devoid of that, well, it's a bit of a head scratcher, really. I'd talk about anything else, but there isn't much. What you see is what you get. Yep. But hey, who gives a damn about a console menu, right? Let's talk vid games. Yes, the games. The most important reason one would get a console in my opinion. And no gaming company has had a better track record of exclusives than Nintendo. I mean, their whole brand and identity is practically built around their many iconic IPs. They literally have their own fighting crossover franchise. So whenever a new console launches, you can expect one of the launch titles being one of these IPs, usually Mario. And with the Switch 2, it's Mario Kart World. Finally, a new Mario Kart after 11 freaking years of Mario Kart 8, which is still an awesome game, but some fans were probably starving for a new entry in the series. And, well, it's Mario Kart again. The gimmick this time around is that it takes place in a big open world where all the tracks physically take place in. Grand Prix is generally the same, except you have to drive to the next track. It's an interesting concept, especially considering there's around 200 different intermission routes depending on which two adjacent tracks you're driving between. Now, Mario Kart World has faced a lot of backlash for forcing these intermission tracks into online play, which many people including I do find a bit tedious and boring with their many straightaways. Nintendo is trying to fix the issue and improve the experience, so I do hope this game will stand out as a solid entry in the series. Aside from that, you got a large roster of characters, many newcomers consisting of mostly Mario enemies, though personally I wish we got more prominent named characters like Professor Egad or, Honey Queen. I don't know. But this is really just a minor nitpick. It's still a fun game with an absolute banger of a soundtrack that's over 12 hours long? Holy mackerel! And they're actually really well done remixes of songs from not just previous Mario Kart games, but the entire Mario franchise, which is pretty darn cool. Next up, to satisfy the platformer lovers is Donkey Kong Bananza, and I gotta say, this one is a little more promising. The Donkey Kong series has also been in a similar situation as Mario Kart, with its last unique entry coming out over 11 years ago. Bananza takes the series in a very different direction than its predecessors that feels a lot more adjacent to Super Mario Odyssey, which makes sense considering the game was made by the same team who developed Odyssey. It's a really big collectathon game with a huge emphasis on bashing and tearing the terrain apart in order to progress. It's a thoroughly satisfying experience you can just turn your brain off to, though at the cost of being a tad easy at times. But it's still overall a solid title for the Switch 2. Aside from those two, there haven't been that many unique exclusives that have come out so far. There is the aforementioned Drag and Drive. For the price of $30, it's okay. At least it's not more than triple its price. But honestly, there's not a lot of content in the game still. You got your main 3-on-3 mode, and some minigames and speed trials around the park. And that's really it. There is no presence of a ranked mode, which is surprising for this sort of sportsy game. At the end of the day, it's just a novelty game you get for the fun absurdity of the concept. Then there's Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which extrudes the bad kind of absurdity. This has got to be the saddest excuse for a $10, $15 game. Literally just a glorified tech demo that barely gives any incentive to play it, unless you're just dying to know what the left magnetic connector does. In response to backlash, Nintendo has said Welcome Tour is worth the price tag and is meant to be a showcase of the Switch 2's intricate features, a very flashy Switch 2 manual. Still feels kind of pretentious to me, considering that Valve and Sony made their tech demos free on Steam Deck and PS5 respectively. Plus their demos are actually playable games with appeal. I can sort of see what Nintendo is doing with Welcome Tour, and some of the interactive activities look cool, but it doesn't warrant $15 in my opinion. Anyway, there's also the pre-existing Switch 1 games that got paid Switch 2 upgrades. Well, upgrades varies from game to game. Generally speaking, most Switch 2 editions of games get upgraded visuals to match the peak performance of the console, while a few of them get some bonus content, like Mario Party Jamboree getting additional modes, or Kirby and the Forgotten Lands getting a whole new story campaign. Both upgrade packs for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom run a lot smoother and give you access to Zelda notes, a service you can get from the Nintendo Switch app. It's got a few knickknacks like a completion guide, newly recorded voice lines for Zelda that play whenever you discover specific areas in the games, and you can share your Ultra Hand designs with other players. Next year in spring, the Switch 2 edition of Super Mario Bros. Wonder releases, bringing a bunch of Mario Party-esque multiplayer modes and additional levels. As for actually new games coming out in the future, let's see what we've got. There's Metroid Prime 4 finally coming out this year after being in development hell for a while. Feeling pretty excited about that one. Kirby Air Riders, the unexpected sequel to Kirby Air Ride on the GameCube. Another racing game coming out pretty soon, and judging from Sakurai's whopping 45-minute direct dedicated to this game, it seems like it'll be a good one. I hope it'll be more fun to play than driving to work, the simulator. Pokemon Legends ZA recently came out, another Pokemon game under the Legends subtitle. It seems these games have a twist of some sort that differentiates themselves from the mainline series. With ZA, the traditional turn-based combat is replaced with real-time combat, a concept that on paper I find a bit interesting. There's a lot of mixed reviews on this one. Many have complained that the exploration of Lumio City feels a bit shallow and the new battle system sucks, among other things. I can't verify any of these claims, having not played the game myself. However, what I will say is that the graphics look pretty recycled and overused. I know this is the modern Pokemon art style, but something about it looks a bit dated and lazy to me. But I digress. Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, another Hyrule Warriors game, this time centered around the events of Tears of the Kingdom. Finally, we'll get the actual lore deets that the former game should have had. I'll finally understand what the hell the imprisoning war was actually about. To be quite honest though, action hack and slash games are usually not my forte, but I may change my mind when this game comes around in November. Duskbloods is a new game developed by From Software, most notable for making Elden Ring and the Dark Souls series. Apparently, this one will be a Switch 2 exclusive only, but it may come over to other platforms eventually, but I can't say for sure. Still, quite interesting we're getting a Souls-like from Software made just for this console. Now I could probably go on and on about all the games coming to the console, but I won't. Overall, there's some neat games here and there, and lesser neat games. But there is a pretty alright selection of stuff available at the time I am making this video, and better games to come. With the prices of these Switch 2 games being pretty high, I probably won't get every or most of them, reserving my purchases for stuff I'm actually interested in. I don't think most of these games warrant their price tag. This is really absurd. Mario Kart World being $110 is wild. Thankfully I got the console bundle, so the game only costed me a little less than a Switch 1 game would. Pretty okay deal, I guess. It doesn't solve the issue that these prices are still unbelievably absurd. Any game being in the triple digits of dollars is unfathomable, especially when we're in an age where indie games are becoming more and more popular, partly due to their low prices. Silk Song being almost a fifth of the price of Tears of the Kingdom on the Switch 2 is nuts. And the upgrade packs are pretty hit or miss. Unless you care about upgrading your game performance and visuals and the specific bonus content in each one, I think they're kinda passable. It's basically DLC, especially for those games getting additional story modes and such. But anyway, to sum up my whole spiel, games, pretty alright. Prices, bleh. So with all that said, is the Switch 2 worth it? Personally, I'm on the fence about it. On the one hand, there is an okay amount of exclusives on it, with more games releasing for it this year. So if you like Nintendo games and you're hyped for the exclusive stuff coming out for the Switch 2, I think purchasing it is justified. There's also the new tech and specs of the console worth considering. As I've said, I couldn't care less about super highly detailed graphics, and I just care about the gameplay. But if you're looking for an upgrade, the Switch 2 may be up your alley, if you have the money for it. The Switch OLED is an alternative that does offer a better screen, some more storage, and a few other goodies compared to the Switch 1, for a slightly higher price, but not as steep as the Switch 2. But then you can't play most of the new games. So it depends if the modern-ish specs and new games do it for you. There is also the new features like the mouse Joy-Cons, the built-in microphone. There's also a camera now for video chat and camera play, as a separate accessory you have to buy, and I haven't even mentioned it in the video because it didn't come with the console, therefore I kinda deem it irrelevant and the price is stupid and I would probably never use it and its existence kinda irks me. I think the mouse controls are kinda neat. That being said, it's still a pricey console, kinda on par with the prices of the PS5 and Xbox Series X. Gotta love capitalism. I can really only see this console intended for a more narrow demographic than its predecessor. If you're comfortable with the Switch 1 and don't care about the new games, or upgrading in general, hey, that's $630 you can instead spend on, about 120 packs of double stuffed Oreos. Personally, I think it's a lukewarm alright console so far. I think it just needs time to build a better collection of games and more quirky stuff like Drag and Drive to give the new features like the mouse controls more importance instead of having it be forgotten about. That's really the only thing that can save the console for me. With the whole home menu and vibe and aesthetic being almost a one-to-one carbon copy of its predecessor, there's hardly anything for me to get behind. It's just kinda sad and weird there's hardly anything new with the Switch 2, or so that's how I feel about it. Every major Nintendo console has had legitimate reasons to warrant their existence. Whether it be a huge step up in graphics and power, or some central gimmick or novelty like the Wii's screen pointer or motion controls, or the GameCube's portability and step up from cartridges to discs, thus improving the games tenfold. My experiences with every Nintendo console I've played is varied and unique, and nothing short of awe. I don't know if it's just me and being older and a curmudgeon, but I don't feel much for this thing. Now, I won't mislead you, I regularly play my Switch 2. I haven't been playing my original Switch 1 ever since getting this console, simply because of its supposed improved performance, not that it drastically alters my opinion of what I've been saying so far, but playing games in handheld mode has never felt better because of the comfortable size of this thing, but that alone doesn't warrant its price in my opinion. All the benefits I care about don't necessarily outweigh the negatives. All things considered, I'd give it a pitiful 6 out of 10. But who knows, if Nintendo does something innovative with this thing, or releases a good roster of games in the long run, I can see myself liking it a little more. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go back to playing Balatro. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Stay snazzy, folks.